Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining this Infoblox webinar. We appreciate you carving out some time in your day to come hear what we have to say and see our slides, so we appreciate that. This webinar is titled BloxOne DDI, Unleash the Enterprise Edge. My name is David Vaneski. I work in product marketing, and I am joined by several people from Infoblox, and I'll let them introduce themselves. But let's start with Kishore. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, David, thank you. So my name is Kishore Putnam. I am the Principal Product Manager for BloxOne DDI product at Infoblox. David Funk,
do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Dave Funk. I'm a product manager. I assist Kishore with product management on BloxOne DDI, and I'm also responsible for our core NIOS product.
I'm Kevin Zettel. I'm Kevin Zettel. I'm a technical marketing engineer here at Infoblox, and I work with the SaaS solutions, which include the BloxOne DDI and also some of our security solutions. So I'll be happy to help answer any questions throughout the webinar, and I have a little presentation for you guys as well.
Thank you, everybody. So let's just talk about what we're going to talk about. So real quick, the agenda. Going to go like this. First, we'll talk about kind of the market forces, the market motion that that caused us to develop and introduce BloxOne DDI, and we frame that as the transformation of edge networking. Then we'll get into the meat of this webinar. We'll have a BloxOne DDI overview, and Kishore will do that. He'll also show you some comparative use cases, how BloxOne DDI, as an example, will stand up or compare to some alternate solutions. And then Kevin will show you a little, well, actually it's not a little, it's a very interesting technical demo of how BloxOne DDI works. Then we'll have a summary of what we talked about and a summary of BloxOne DDI. And then we're going to reserve some time at the end for questions and answers. So now, let's talk about quickly transformation of the edge network. Kind of in big blocks, what do we see going on? There are many factors. I suspect you know these factors better than we do, but just to make sure that we're on the same wavelength here. We see factor number one, I guess, that critical applications are moving to the cloud. This is hardly new, right? People have been adopting SaaS applications for years now. But it is in fact changing the way networks work, and it is placing new demands on DDI kinds of services. Big bucket number two is the network's edge is moving towards those branch offices. So data center centric networks are now needing to touch on the cloud and touch on applications that are sitting in the cloud. And the cloud could be private, could be hybrid, could be public. And then the third big motion is software-defined solutions, software-defined networking, software-defined WAN, software-defined period. They are working to simplify the networking challenge. And critical applications moving to the cloud, the network moving towards the edge, and software-defined solutions. Those are all issues that we have taken into account and try to reflect in the solution that we call BloxOne DDI. So what does that mean specifically at the edge? It means that some of the needs for DNS, DHCP, and IP address management have evolved. Specifically, it means that high performance, that is fast and highly reliable access to applications must be provided, and they must be provided to applications wherever they're residing. Again, in a traditional data center, private cloud, hybrid cloud, public cloud, SaaS, all of the above. There is no one right answer. They're all right answers. Number two, there has to be efficient management of many sites. There are lots of remote offices, branch offices, Internet of Things. They all contribute to site proliferation, or you could say sprawl. Managing them by individuals does not scale well. It has to be a more efficient solution to managing DDI over many sites. Thirdly, SD-WAN software, another, one of the key software-defined solutions. SD-WAN is an important wave of the future. It has many advantages, be they economic, management, scale, reliability. DDI services have to complement those advantages of SD-WAN because SD-WAN is real. And then finally, the footprint for DDI solutions, that has to be optimized for remote sites and branch offices. Big boxes, be they big real boxes or big virtual boxes, well, they don't necessarily fit smaller networks. One size does not fit all. So a solution at the edge has to be sized for the edge network. And he can talk about BloxOne DDI.
Well, thank you, David. So this webinar is about BloxOne DDI, basically DNS, DHCP, and IPAM services that are supported on our BloxOne platform. So before I get into the BloxOne DDI details, I wanted to kind of briefly speak to you about what BloxOne platform initiative is from Infoblox. So the BloxOne platform is a cloud-managed SaaS platform which today supports both DDI network services and threat defense security services. In the future, we plan to add new network services to our BloxOne portfolio. And but for this webinar, we're just focusing on BloxOne DDI functionality. And we'll dig deeper into the features and functionality in the next few slides. And what are the BloxOne DDI key characteristics of the platform, of the application we support today? And it is, as most of you are well aware, today Infoblox offers the integrated DNS, DHCP, and IPAM services on our on-prem NIOS-based products, including our Trinsic 8X series, 14X series, 22X series, and other platforms. So David earlier at the beginning of this webinar had stated that, how had spoken to you about how the core network services are moving from the data center to the edge locations like, branch offices, remote locations, retail locations, and basically towards the edge. And so BloxOne DDI platform, or the application, was developed and brought to the market to address this very need, basically to enable local DDI services and deployment of these services at the edge and branch offices and remote sites. With BloxOne DDI, you get the same functionality that is offered on our NIOS platform. That is the plan. Some of the features are not going to be available for some time, but the features that are available on BloxOne DDI platform today are well suited for remote office, branch office deployments. And basically, BloxOne DDI platform provides the best-of-breed DNS, DHCP, and IPAM services, and it supports local survivability in case your link to your data center fails. If you're backhauling, I saw that in the survey before I started my slides, as David was taking the survey, I saw that there's a 37.5% of the folks on the webinar are actually backhauling their traffic to the data center. So in case, suppose the link to the data center fails, you do have local survivability, and if you have internet links separate, so you still have your local survivability and you can resolve DNS queries locally. That is possible with BloxOne DDI. And then it also provides high-performance connectivity, low-latency connectivity with the SaaS-based applications like Office 365 and Salesforce if you are, from the branch itself directly. And it is highly scalable, flexible, and cost-effective. And above all, you can manage it centrally what do I mean by that? I will give you more details on that in this slide. So BloxOne DDI can be all the branch office deployments can be managed centrally and through the cloud, and then we can scale from tens to thousands of branch offices or remote sites easily. So this applies to whether you are a corporation of 10 locations, branch locations, or whether you're a corporation of thousands of locations. It'll dynamically scale to as many branch locations as needed. And then it'll support, as I mentioned, local DDI services on-prem. Authoritative DNS functionality is supported locally, so that in case, like I said, if your link to the data center fails, if you're actually resolving your DNS queries externally to your branch office, that shouldn't matter because we have the authoritative DNS functionality right on the premise. So that should take care of your DNS resolution locally. So that's another advantage. And as I mentioned, it's cloud managed. So next, what I would like to do is I would like to actually take an example of 3 use cases traditionally deployed today, and then compare them to how BloxOne DDI solves some of those issues that you're being faced with the traditional deployments. So in the first use case shown on this slide, it compares how a server-based DNS DHCP service is traditionally deployed and managed to how BloxOne DDI, which is cloud-based, compares to, and what are the advantages it offers to the traditionally server-based deployment. The server-based DNS DHCP entails manual upgrades to the software with new versions or even patches. So that means you have to go to each branch and manually upgrade, or whenever there's a patch or a new software version available, you'll have to go and upgrade it manually. And there could be software version inconsistencies because if you have large number of branch offices in your enterprise, you may not be able to upgrade them all at the same time because it takes manpower and it takes time, and so there could be inconsistencies in versions of software running at each of these branch locations. And in addition, server-based DNS DHCP involves scheduling of upgrades, so the scheduling is an issue, and visibility, of course, is limited to the branch itself. You don't have the visibility, central visibility of all of the branches. You would have only just local visibility from a branch to branch. And recently, we have had several examples of multinational customers with thousands of locations worldwide. They were having a lot of pain and headache of having to patch individual vulnerabilities and releases at each of their branch locations whenever there was a new patch available, right? So this goes back to not just Infoblox, but every other vendor. That's going to be the case. So if you compare this to the BloxOne DDI deployment, which is all cloud-based or SaaS-based, you can push the latest version of DDI software to all of your branch locations simultaneously. All branches will be running the same version of DDI software. Scheduling upgrades of software is easier and only has to be done one time. The other big advantage is that now you have central visibility of all your branch DDI deployments. It's not limited to local branches at all. And on the next use case, what I want to show you was how traditionally router-based DNS DHCP, the challenges it offers, and how BloxOne DDI deployment at the branch overcomes those, right? Today, most of the DHCP services are offered at remote locations and branch offices through a local server or router. This leads to a very device-centric approach to management, where each site is managed individually. All of the disadvantages I mentioned in the previous server-based DNS DHCP use case apply to the router-based DNS DHCP deployment as well. So basically all the things that I mentioned, site-to-site inconsistency of configurations and software versions, and then visibility being limited to just the branch locations, and then what it takes to provision and upgrade each of these branch locations, DDI services, which is very cumbersome and error prone. So all of those still exist even in this example of deployment. So with BloxOne DDI, or again, you can have central visibility, and you can solve the problem of manually provisioning. Now with BloxOne, it is all automatic provisioning, and you can do it one time. You can from the cloud, and then you can have the consistency of software versions running at each of your branch locations, and it's easier to automatically upgrade and avoid manual provisioning. And of course, the other thing is having central overall visibility of your deployments in the cloud and at the branches. And the last use case, which is a very important use case in these days, in these times where most of the corporations are going are accessing cloud-based SaaS applications like Office 365 or Salesforce or ServiceNow or other payroll applications. You have to have easy access to these SaaS applications from your branch locations. In traditional on-prem based DNS deployments today, your DNS queries are, first of all, they're backhauled to the central main data center for resolving to the app server you're trying to access. If you're trying to access an Office 365 SaaS application, you will need to first backhaul your DNS queries to your data center, and then from there it is resolved. And even in that case, the resolution will be done from a data center. It'll pick the closest location, Office 365 POP, if you will, closest to your data center, not your branch location. So, for example, if you're sitting at a branch office in Arizona and you're trying to access Office 365 SaaS application, and your data center is in New York, your DNS query will be backhauled to your data center in New York first, and then it will be resolved and you'll be directed to the Office 365 POP closest to your data center in New York, not near your branch office in Arizona. And so in BloxOne DDI case, this solves this problem by actually resolving the query locally, because we support authoritative DNS at the branch itself, and you'll be connected to the Office 365 server closest to your branch office. And so that reduces the latency, and it increases user experience at the branch office tremendously. And it provides a better user experience, and then avoids also latencies on two ways, right? One is backhauling DNS queries to your data center, and then also connecting you to the closest SaaS application that you're trying to access. In addition, if your communication link from your branch office to your data center fails, you will not have access to the external world, as all of your DNS queries are going to be resolved at the data center if that is traditionally deployed. That's how things work. But with BloxOne, you'll have local survivability, and if you still have internet connection, then you can go to internet and have your local breakout and have your access to the SaaS applications that you want without depending on your link to the data center. In the previous slide, we have covered some of the key benefits of the BloxOne DDI solution. Now, Kevin Zettel from our technical marketing engineering group will show you a brief technical demo to showcase some of the features that I shared with you of BloxOne DDI. After the demo, I will return and recap the benefits and next steps. Also, if you have any questions on the demo, please use chat tool or we'll promptly address them in the Q&A portion of our webinar. And also, you can contact our local account rep or Infoblox rep for additional information or personalized demos. So Kevin, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Kishore. I appreciate that. So thank you guys for joining in. So in the previous slides, we showed some of the benefits so far of BloxOne DDI, as Kishore was saying. And now I'll be showing you a quick video on how you can deploy BloxOne DDI in any location very quickly. I just want to note that what we'll be looking through is what we at Infoblox call the CSP, or Cloud Service Portal, which is an application which we host all of our applications, including BloxOne DDI. I also want to note that when deploying these on-prem hosts that connect to your networks to our cloud solutions, that they're very easy to deploy anywhere with any type of software that can run a Docker container or a VM. I want to emphasize that again on how easy it is for anyone to deploy these any place very quickly. So you can get started today if you need to. If you have any questions while watching this demo video, please use the chat tool at the bottom and we'll make sure to answer them if possible. So I'm going to go ahead and start the video and hopefully it's educational.
Now let's see an overview on how to configure everything. Once you're logged
Inside the CSP portal, once you're logged in, under Manage, we'll have a tab called On-Prem Host and another called Join Tokens. With the On-Prem Host tab, we're able to connect and configure DDI On-Prem hosts from the cloud. Inside, we can start by adding a name, description, tags, and enable services.
You're also able to search for your on-prem host.
And edit any settings inside of it.
And do note that once created, you will need to go under the Applications and Services tab and enable the appliance.
Now, as we jump into the Join Token tab, the Join Token is an authentication key that we use to deploy our on-premise hosts and is required in order to deploy any application from the Infoblox BloxOne platform.
A Join Token allows you to automatically deploy on-prem hosts without having to first configure them on CSP. This becomes more useful when deploying many on-prem hosts across the network and can save you a lot of time. Here, it is very important to pay attention as you want to make sure to copy the Join Token. If you don't save it, you will not be able to access it later, as there is no way to access the Join Token again. And just to drill that point in, when I look up the Join Token I just created and try to edit it, there is no place to recover the Join Token once created. Now under Downloads, you will see that there is an option to download the on-prem host as a Docker container or a virtual machine. Here I'll be showing the Docker deployment. Here, once the file is downloaded, you can begin. First, I'm logging in as sudo, just to make the deployment faster. However, do note that this isn't required. Now here, I'm navigating to the file which I've downloaded the on-prem host file in. Now I'm loading the download file as a Docker image on my Docker instance. This should only take a few seconds. However, you should be able to see the newly formed Docker image once it's finished. Next, I'm running a command to run the image as a container. Do note that I use the Join Token here. Then, I get an output helping me confirm that the task is started with the ID of the container. But to make sure, let's look at all the running containers. Now here, when I start running the container, I inserted an additional line to view the logs as it starts up. You don't need to do this, but it could be useful if you run into an issue. Now here, I'm just looking at all the logs as the container starts up. You can hit Ctrl-C to escape, or just wait for the process to end. Once the startup is complete, you may need to wait a few more minutes, as a few more containers should start up on their own, as you can see here. Here, I'm just grabbing the IP of the Linux machine so that I can find it in the CSP. Now when we go back to the CSP, we'll see that the on-prem host was created for us automatically. Now we just need to simply enable the applications and services we want for the installed appliance. This may take a few seconds before it's ready. However, once the applications are enabled on the Docker container, you'll be able to run queries through it without any issue. Here, we can see that the new Docker images are installed onto the on-prem host, which were added as we enabled the DNS and DHCP applications.
As a final note, it is recommended that you change the name of the on-prem host to something more recognizable. Now here, I'm going to show you one way for deploying a DDI on-prem host as a VM. In this case, we're using an ESXi server, and this is just one way in which you can deploy an on-prem host. Here, I'm deploying a new OVF template. Under the Select OVF files, I'm creating a name for the on-prem host and selecting the on-prem host file, which I downloaded from CSP a while ago. Then here, I'm selecting the storage I want to use, and then selecting the network that I want to put the DDI on-prem host on. Finally, under the last step, I'm applying the join token, as well as some other pieces of information, such as the IP, netmask, gateway, and also the name server. Here, you can also customize your deployment depending on your organization's needs, and nothing but the IP, netmask, gateway, and name server is absolutely required, as you can configure the rest later if desired. Now here, after a few minutes, the on-prem host will be loaded, and we can go to the CSP portal and see that the join token counter has gone up by 1. Just like the Docker deployment, a new on-prem host has been created for us. Here, I'm just refreshing the page to confirm that the CSP can talk with the on-prem host, and now we just need to enable it. After a few minutes, the DNS and DHCP will start to work, and even if you refresh the page, it may not show up on the CSP right away. A quicker way to confirm it's been enabled is to simply test that it's been enabled with a dig request. It may take a few minutes, but eventually you will get a reply.
Well, thank you everyone for watching that. If you have any questions, remember to put them in the chat, and we will be sure to answer them. Kishore, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. I hope you all enjoyed Kevin's demo. Now I want to give you an overview of the BloxOne DDI offering itself. I talked a lot about benefits of BloxOne DDI and about the features that it will support. Now I want to give you a brief overview of how you can actually buy it, what is it hosted on, licensing, etc. So you can you have multiple options on how you can procure BloxOne DDI application for your branch locations. You can deploy it as a VM, as Kevin was demonstrating, on your chosen COTS server, or you can deploy it as a Docker container on your server. If you choose, you can also buy BloxOne DDI software bundled with our B105 hardware appliance from Infoblox, all from Infoblox. In case you want to deploy it in a high available configuration, you can deploy dual appliances for your local redundancy, support that. From a feature package and how you can procure it from a feature and licensing perspective, we offer 3 packages. As basically, they're called Essentials, Business, and Advanced. Essentials supports base or entry-level DDI functionality for large-scale deployments, and Business package supports core features for enterprise-wide remote location deployments, and then the Advanced package offers more advanced functionality, like things like DHCP, fingerprinting, etc., for your branch deployments. And also, BloxOne DDI is offered as a 1-year or a 3-year subscription service, and you can contact your Infoblox account rep for more details on the BloxOne DDI offering. Going on to the next slide. So far, we have presented to you BloxOne DDI and its value. Now, in the next couple of slides, I want to show you how BloxOne DDI fits into the broader Infoblox portfolio. While we may be familiar with Infoblox NIOS solutions, and while you all may be familiar with Infoblox NIOS solutions and appliances, The BloxOne DDI solution extends that reach of core network services to the remote branch office networks with BloxOne DDI. How does BloxOne DDI fit in and relate to the Infoblox product portfolio? As I mentioned earlier, BloxOne DDI is a SaaS-based application and can be deployed as a VM or a container or an appliance at the branch. It is most suited for branch offices, and it's cloud managed. And whereas the NIOS appliances are deployed at the data center or close to data center, if you will. If you are an existing NIOS customer, you can use BloxOne as a complement to your NIOS grids. You can deploy NIOS appliances for your core DDI services at the data center and BloxOne DDI at the branch offices. The major advantage of such hybrid deployment is that with BloxOne DDI, you can have the visibility of both your branch office BloxOne DDI appliance application, as well as your data center NIOS grid deployment centrally from the cloud. I will go into more detail on the hybrid NIOS plus BloxOne DDI use case on the next slide. So as you can see, with BloxOne DDI deployed at your branch office, if you already have an NIOS appliance at your data center, you get you get local survivability, faster and easier access to SaaS applications, to Microsoft Office 365 or Salesforce or ServiceNow and other SaaS applications from your branches easily. And the DNS resolution happens locally at the branch and not at the data center. And in addition to these benefits, the BloxOne DDI at the branches, combined with your NIOS at the data center, you get the benefit of having visibility from the cloud of not only your BloxOne DDI network at your branches, networks at the branches, but also visibility of your NIOS grids at your data center from BloxOne Customer Services Portal. Now, this feature is going to be available starting February 2020. It's not available now, but it's going to be available in February 2020. So from the cloud, you gain visibility of all your DDI deployments, whether it's branch or your data center. That's what BloxOne empowers you to do. And then in the next few slides, let me build this out. So what I wanted to show you on this slide, the key takeaways are, how does the Infoblox portfolio of products help you smoothly migrate from centrally deployed DDI or threat defense security services that are data center based and are more hardware prone and on-prem, to a more cloud SaaS-based BloxOne DDI and threat defense deployment in the cloud. So as David was mentioning earlier, most of the trends today are because of the challenges the on-prem and hardware appliances pose today. Most of the services, core network services, are moving to the edge and are becoming more cloud-based. And so Infoblox also is keeping up with the trend and actually trying to stay ahead of the trend by offering these smooth migration scenarios for the customers to move their more centrally deployed data center-based deployments to a more cloud-based edge solutions going forward, whether it's DDI or threat defense services. So the BloxOne, in addition to the existing Infoblox portfolio, allows you the deployment flexibility in terms of hybrid deployment of NIOS appliances at your central locations and BloxOne DDI SaaS applications at the branch locations, and gain the capability, as I mentioned earlier. This is very important, having the visibility of all of your DDI deployments, whether they are branch DDI BloxOne deployments or NIOS grids at your data center. So as you can see, with our comprehensive portfolio of products for DDI and threat defense, we offer many options which all complement each other and work very well together, offering flexibility and optimized. And these are all optimized for specific deployment scenario at the branch, or data center, or on-prem, or cloud, or a hybrid one if you want. So going to summarize, basically, you know, flexibility is a key feature for BloxOne DDI, with the choice of physical or virtual deployment options through subscription pricing and with 1 to 3 year subscription pricing capability. You can deploy BloxOne in a hybrid manner or just by itself at the robo locations for enabling powerful SaaS application access locally and for local survivability. So in closing, I want to leave you with this. If you have tens to thousands of remote branch offices, and if you want local, faster, and reliable access to your SaaS applications like Office 365 and Salesforce at your branches, and also want centralized cloud SaaS-based automatic provisioning and management of your DDI branch deployments, and you want visibility, a central visibility of both your branch BloxOne DDI deployments as well as NIOS grids at the data center, and then the BloxOne DDI is definitely that's something that you need to consider for your needs. And if you want to know more details of BloxOne DDI, please contact your Infoblox AM. With that, I hand it over to David back.
So the first question, I'm gonna give this to Dave Funk, probably the best person to take this one on. And the question is, how does BloxOne DDI relate to Trinsic and NIOS? Dave, want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, so that is a good question. So as everyone knows, we have this current product that runs NIOS that allows up 200, a little more than 200 members. These are, as we all know, larger, more powerful, more expensive appliances. But we can't really put those, our customers really can't put those at all the branch offices. It would be a very expensive thing to do, and you may run out of grid capacity to do that. So that's why we introduced BloxOne DDI. BloxOne DDI is all about scale. So you can have thousands and thousands and thousands of sites. You can deploy these appliances either physically or as a Docker container, as Kevin said, or a VM on hardware you already have, or on white boxes. So they're very affordable. The software subscription is very affordable. You can get the tier you want. So BloxOne DDI is all about scale. NIOS doesn't scale well. You can solve that problem in NIOS by having multiple grids, but again, it's kind of an expensive solution. So how do they work together? So you can certainly use zone transfers to transfer the data back and forth. We're also going to offer in the cloud, in the BloxOne cloud, you will be able to see all your grid data. You won't be able to manage it from there. In other words, you can't go in and change records and things like that. It's not read-write, but you will be able to see all your grid data in that cloud services portable. So in one single location, you can see it all, both BloxOne DDI and grid. So these two solutions really complement each other. The whole NIOS solution is a beefier solution. It's more feature-rich right now. BloxOne DDI is still fairly new, and we will be adding features hand over fist as time goes on. So that's basically the difference.
Great. Since you brought up grid, we have two other questions that are both grid related. So I'll ask you, Dave, to answer these as well. One is, does BloxOne DDI work on the Infoblox grid? And the kind of related question is, can BloxOne, can I add BloxOne DDI to an existing Infoblox grid?
So the BloxOne solution will not be a member of the grid. So that's not on our roadmap. We would probably never go there. So NIOS is NIOS, BloxOne DDI is BloxOne DDI. They complement each other and they can work together, but you will never be able to take a BloxOne appliance and make it a member of the grid. That kind of defeats the purpose, because then you're back into, well, you can't really scale that. So those will always be separate. And what was the other question?
Can I add this to an existing grid?
Well, no, you can't. That's what I just answered. No, you cannot.
Oh, okay.
Take
Sorry.
a Blox.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So I think by definition, the other question is, does BloxOne work on the Infoblox grid?
Well, no. So a BloxOne DDI appliance can communicate with the grid and they can exchange data, but it would never be a member.
Right. Okay. Another question, and Kishore, let me hand this one off to you. What is the status of BloxOne DDI? And I believe that means, what is the commercial status of BloxOne DDI at this time?
Yeah, thanks, David. BloxOne DDI was announced in August, and it's shipping today. It's a shipping product, so it's available so you can buy it today. The SKUs are ready, and it's available today.
Great. Okay.
So here's a couple.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, there's a couple more questions here I see that I'll answer. So one of them is, okay, so BloxOne decentralizes the management of the grid. So what we're going to offer in the management plane of BloxOne DDI, in the management plane, you will be able to see all your grid data, the data you choose to synchronize. So you can see that to help you manage it, but you won't be able to actually make any changes to the grid in that interface. To make any changes to the grid, you would still log into the grid manager and do it that way. So how do systems using the BloxOne as a DNS server register services back to the primary domain? So that, assume you mean, so the BloxOne DDI right now is authoritative as a secondary, so their primary has to be somewhere else. That can be an Infoblox server, it could be Bind, whatever. Very shortly, though, in our very next iteration of software for BloxOne DDI, we will support being a primary in the cloud. So, and then you can push the data to those secondaries. I think that was the spirit of that question. Is there a cost difference between BloxOne DDI and setting up a VM and using my existing NIOS grid? So I assume you mean if you add a member on your VM, add a NIOS member on your VM, would there be a difference in price between doing that and getting a BloxOne DDI appliance? Yes, BloxOne DDI is much cheaper, and I encourage you to talk to your account teams for that information, but it will be a much cheaper solution. But if the question is, could you put BloxOne DDI as a virtual instance on your VM host? Yes, you can run that. We support BloxOne DDI as a physical appliance. You can get your own physical appliance, white box, and put it on there. Anything that will take a Docker container or take a VM, so you can do it virtually. Let's see, did I answer? I think I answered all those questions.
There was one question, Dave, maybe you answered it maybe on the chat, but does BloxOne offer a DTC license?
Yeah, I did answer it on the chat. So that is, we don't have that today. That's something that we're looking at as a possible future roadmap item.
Cool. Okay, a couple more questions out of the hopper here. One, since you were talking about pricing, let's go back to one of the other questions. Kind of what is the pricing structure for BloxOne DDI? That's simple enough for me to take on, I guess. BloxOne DDI is well, for the software, and it is primarily a software product. We use a subscription pricing model, and you can have a subscription for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. That's the way we sell it. And there are tiers for each tiers of prices for each tier of service. Kishore mentioned that we have Essentials, Business, and Advanced Class. So each one of those has its own price tier, or has its own price, I should say. Like with any solution, there are volume discounts that can apply. And with a solution of this nature, the number of appliances you need is dependent on the capacity that you desire. So suffice to say, there are several moving parts to pricing out a BloxOne DDI solution. Every configuration is somewhat unique, so you really need to have a discussion with either a channel partner or an account manager or a territory manager, so they can create a quote that really is best suited to your needs. So let's see, another question, and I'll ask Kevin to give to take a shot at this one if you're ready or available. Kevin, what is how does BloxOne DDI relate to BloxOne Threat Defense, since they're both BloxOne products?
Yeah, this is a great question. So they're both complementary solutions. They both are cloud-based. They're both built on the BloxOne platform. BloxOne Threat Defense, however, is that DNS security, while BloxOne DDI delivers that core network services and is that authoritative. Now, BloxOne DDI can also be recursive, but you're not going to get that same protection as you would with Threat Defense. So Threat Defense is going to protect you from data exfiltration, infiltration, botnet communications, and it has that heuristics AI watching it, making sure that traffic is secure. And some use cases is like email phishing campaigns. We're going to help stop those kind of things before your internal employees get out to malicious sites. Whereas BloxOne DDI is going to be that structure to make sure that you're able to get to your internal resources, and it can also act as a recursive server and get out to anywhere else. Again, it's just you're not going to have that same protection as Threat Defense. Hopefully that answers it.
Great, thank you. Here's another good question from the audience. Dave, I'm going to ask you to take this one on. Or maybe how does, is perhaps the proper question, how does BloxOne DDI support high availability?
So we will have protocol redundancy. We won't have HA the way it exists in NIOS, where you literally have two boxes on the same network and there's a heartbeat between them. We will support high availability, but we won't be doing it that way. We'll all be doing it with protocol. So you would, in theory, have two boxes at the same site, and they would be protocol redundant. Also, if you're running DHCP, which we'd expect most people to be doing at these sites, we're now running ISC Kia, which is ISC's a new version of DHCP software on those boxes, and Kia does high availability in a totally different way. It's all done with the database, so, and it's active. So it's actually a much better way of doing it.
Great.
Also, there's some more. Sorry, there's a couple more. I was typing it in the chat, but I'll just go ahead and answer it. So if you manage a grid and BloxOne devices, then we need to have separate upgrade codes to manage. Actually, with BloxOne DDI and BloxOne in general, Infoblox is on the hook for keeping all that software current and up to date and rolling out new features. I mean, you'll come in and tomorrow, and you'll log in and see, oh, there's some new features there. So so you don't have to worry about upgrades anymore. Infoblox will do that. That's one of the that's one of the advantages with a cloud-based solution. You don't have to worry about upgrades. Obviously, with NIOS, that continues, and you upgrade that as you will as time goes on. Was there, okay, HA pair. So HA pair. So BloxOne DDI, like I said, won't support an HA pair the way you think of it as NIOS does, where it's an active passive. It's actually a better way of doing it with protocol redundancy active and with Kia active. I think I answered everything.
There was one question on BloxOne decentralized management of the grid.
Yeah, I think I answered that, but I'll cover it again briefly. So does BloxOne decentralize the management of the grid? The way that works is we will offer the ability to see all your grid data in the BloxOne interface, the Cloud Services Portal, CSP, that Kevin basically was going through. So you'll be able to see all that data. You won't be able to edit that grid data there. If you want to actually make changes, you'll need to do that from the grid master like you do today, but you will be able to see it.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave, Kishore, Kevin, for handling all those questions. We're getting close to the top of the hour, so we'll try to bring this to closure here. So next steps. If you're interested in learning more about BloxOne DDI or any of the other things you've heard about today, as Kishore mentioned, contact your channel partner from Infoblox or your account team. That's what they're there for. They can help you work on it, get more information, see a on-site demo, perhaps talk about a proof of concept or anything of that ilk. For documentation, as we mentioned, these slides will be sent to you. These resources exist when you get the slides. These are all live links, but you can look at a data sheet, a solution note, a white paper on software-defined DDI, a video associated with this, as well as I believe we have 3 case studies on BloxOne DDI published already. So these resources are there for you. And then finally, besides thanking you for coming, one thing that's kind of important for us, for people at Infoblox who do webinars, we'd like you to pay attention when you get the email from us, the follow-up email. There is a short survey regarding this webinar. If you could invest a few minutes in answering that survey, we would very much appreciate your feedback. That's what helps us make for better webinars. And if you give us honest, candid feedback on how this went and what we could do better, we do take that to heart and try to make these events more useful to you. So with that, I thank you all for attending. Again, we know your time is valuable. We appreciate you allocating some of that to us, and look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. So goodbye and have a good holidays.